Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be sitting down with best-selling author Eric Qualman. He's been recognized by Forbes and Fast Company as a digital leadership guru. And what I love about Eric is that he's spent his career at the intersection of technology and human nature. As an educator at schools like Harvard and Northwestern, and an advisor to everyone from Facebook to Disney to Sony, he challenges us to forget everything we think we know about technology and go back to the drawing board on what makes us human. I want to ask him what he really thinks about AI impacting our society, our work, and ourselves. Are we about to see everything change, nothing change, or somewhere in between? Let's find out. Hey, I'm here with Eric Qualman. Eric, super excited to talk to you. Maybe just to kick things off, you know, where you're sitting with your sort of digital leadership hat on, if I can call it that, what's kind of most exciting to you right now? What trends are you looking at? What's top of mind in terms of, you know, what's changing for the better?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm a big fan of the technology changes every second, but human nature never does. So some stuff stands the test of time. I always lead Flintstones first, but when it comes to technology, artificial intelligence, I really think it's underhyped long term. It's overhyped a little bit right now, but long term, that's what I'm looking for is those cycles, that long term of what is this actually going to become? So I'm really pumped about that.
I want to come back to AI in just a second, but you
Yeah.
used a phrase that I haven't heard before that caught my attention, which is Flintstones first, or leading Flintstones first. What does that mean?
It means you can't replace face to face, whether that's a coffee, whether it's a lunch, whether it's a
Hmm.
conference that you're speaking at or going to attend. But when time, distance, and safety are an issue, then you can layer in these digital tools to deepen those relationships. Because obviously, I've been in technology for close to 4 decades, but I love the human connection, and I love what can technology enable to either remove friction or bring us closer. So that's why I've spent my career just digging into tech is really how to deepen relationships.
I like the argument about bringing us closer. And, you know, AI is a funny one because, you know, as I'm sure you do, if you follow the news, like people will say AI will do, you know, you name it, AI will do it for you,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's pretty close to cleaning your dishes, if the news is to be believed. So, but you talk about removing friction and deepening connections. Like when you look at, as you said, long term, this tech is probably underhyped. Are those the two main areas? What could that look like in your mind? Like, where are we really going to see the most kind of, you know, individual and team level benefit from this technology?
I mean, the biggest benefit of artificial intelligence is allowing us to be more human, ironically enough. So, can it reduce the mundane and can it give us more time? And then when you have more time, it's up to us to repurpose that to things that matter, whether that's volunteering, developing your community, or just spending time with your loved ones. So, for example, if artificial intelligence can quickly tell me if I'm about to have my second child and I need a bigger car, if it can quickly reduce my consideration set that says, hey, 20 of your closest friends have purchased a bigger car because they're in the same season of life as you are. They've got 2 kids or more, and they've all seemed to have purchased one of these two vehicles. This is where they bought it. This is how much they paid or leased for it. All of a sudden that gives me a lot more time and confidence. And so I can then, if someone's already done that work, like my friends have already researched it and figured it out, then why do I need to do that? And so let's say that saves me 20 hours. Then I can use that 20 hours, then put back into my life. Or a lot of people are using it right now for travel. I use it extensively a lot for travel. So we have a vacation that's coming up. It's probably saved me about 50 hours just from simple searches of is there a direct train from Krakow to Vienna? If so, where's the best place to pick up that train? Which station? And where can I buy the ticket for the most affordable price? And then that just saves me doing that over and over. That just saves me tons of time. When that's why you hear these terms like agent. It's a lot of easier for us to grasp that concept when it comes to travel because you're used to a travel agent. And so now you're using an agent, AI agent to help you with your travel. And literally, it saved me close to 50 hours already.
That's awesome. And by the way, it sounds like you've got a great trip lined up there.
Yeah, yeah,
If that's any indication.
yeah.
So, you know, one of the things I like to get into here is just sort out there's obviously a lot of benefit here. And if, you as an individual or, you as Eric, the team lead can save 50 hours of work here and, not use a travel agent or, not use whatever traditional resources you'd use to pick your car. Like there's winners and losers here, right?
Yeah.
And, do you have a sense of broadly, let's start by talking organizational level. I want to talk about people in a minute, but
Yep.
organizational level, the organizations that are well positioned versus not well positioned. What are some of the qualities they share here?
Just, they always say that the future favors the bold or the brave. That's not really true. The future favors the most adaptable. So
Mm.
any company that's flexible and adaptable is well positioned because we don't know what's going to happen, this technology. And so, are you able to move quickly and adjust? Are you able to fail? Because failure is not the opposite of success, it's the reason for your success. So, really, two things. Do you have a culture of adaptability? And do you have a culture that embraces failure? They're not going to get it right the first time. And so, to figure it out quickly. So, those are the companies that are well positioned to do that. And obviously, this stuff takes a lot of compute power. So, you'll hear a lot, compute's the new oil. So some of the bigger companies, you need to have deep pockets for that capital that's required to have these data centers, to have the electricity, to do this compute power.
You got into my second question there already, but when is adaptability also, the secret sauce for leaders right now, do you think? Like if I ask you the question about who's going to win from a leadership perspective, what are the skills that leaders need in this era? Is it still adaptability? Is that number one? What does that picture look like?
I think number 1 is still your emotional intelligence, your EQ. Ironically, those are my initials, but, it's just your, emotional intelligence is number 1, and then I'd put close second would be, are you nimble? Are you adaptable? Are you willing to listen to the younger generation, and not be the old man on your lawn? So it's really just about understanding those are the 2, I think. It's just your emotional intelligence and then adaptability, to be able to do that. And all this stuff's not perfect. That's why I say it's overhyped short term, underhyped long term. For example, I mean, I live in Austin, so it's awesome. You have self-driving Waymo cars here, fantastic. But I was sitting there. I got to go really early tomorrow, 3 o'clock. I got to get up to go on a flight, and I'm bringing my golf clubs. And we live in a gated community. All of a sudden, I realized, well, wait, that thing's not gonna be able to open the gate. It can't punch in the number. So there's like little nuances like that that's just fascinating to me. I was like, but it's fantastic for we were talking before the show here. I've got 8th and 9th grade girls. Something that just dawned on me this week. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a business case. There's not a and most drivers are fine, but there's not a driver that I have to worry about if I was going to put my 8th grade daughter in a car. Now they're just in a driverless car. So there's a lot of things people don't see, including myself. But when you see it, you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That's like a huge business case just for like tweens and teens to be able to shuttle around.
So it's really interesting because I'm just trying to like marry that in my mind with the comment about emotional intelligence, right? Like
Well,
w- the implication there is like and like I don't know, drivers are a weird thing with this, but when you're talking about your family, you're saying like I would rather have no driver than like an unknown driver. Um which is like to me one particular story where it's, technology can
yep.
potentially replace a human there, but in other cases, it sounds like the human connection is more important than ever. Is that are both of those true, and how do we distinguish between those two different worlds?
Both are true. I mean, it's the Flintstones and Jetsons world, so it's not an
Mm.
or deal. So it's great. So, to example, you probably want your nanny to be a real person at this point in time. That might
Ideally.
change a little bit, but I want a self-driving car for my tweens. But I probably want if I had a 1 year old, then
Mm.
I'd want probably the nanny to be the human.
Yeah, ideally a human for your
Yeah,
1-year-old for sure. So emotional intelligence.
yeah.
One of the things that we're hearing more about, and I've talked to other guests about, is in some ways generative AI. I don't know if you'd call it augmenting or replacing emotional intelligence, but you hear about, people who are dating and it's like, okay,
Mhm.
well, how can I just generate, text or content that's going to be most appealing to a date? Or, I'm in a management position and I'm going to have my emails written by Chat GPT. Like, Is that net good? Is that net worrying? If you're a leader who's actually worried about their emotional intelligence and about their human connection, is there still room for a tool like that? And what guardrails would you put around that, that use case?
Yeah, I think that's the key term there is guardrails. And so it's learning to use this new technology. So anytime there's new technology, there's the good and the bad. And we're living through that right now. We don't know the timeline. That's the thing. If anyone knew the timeline and be the richest person in the world, because you heard me say it's overhyped, short term, underhyped, long term. It's like, well, Eric, what's the term? I don't know. If you did, you'd be the richest person around. So it's really about leveraging this technology, both the good and the bad, but it's really the guardrail. So we're living through it with social media. So we don't have the technical. So you think about cars first come out, we don't have a seatbelt. Then all of a sudden, probably good to have a seatbelt in these things. And then you have kids who are like, probably make it a law that if you're sitting and they're under 14 in the back seat, they have to wear the seatbelt. Okay. So there's always that progress in that window. And we're living that right now with social media. Teen suicide, especially with girls, way up. And so we're trying to figure out what is the guardrail for that. And that guardrail might be that you have to be 16 before you get on social media. So, and I'm a strong proponent of that. I think we're drinking a lot of the lead in the water and we're not helping any of these kids out. Just kind of like, here you go. Good luck. And so that happens all the time with technology. And another analogy is interesting to think about is with AI, all of a sudden I teach a class at Northwestern University, master's level class, and the students are all really directors or executive vice presidents
Mm.
of their companies. And so they want to learn AI. But originally, when AI comes out, Northwestern immediately, because it's changed, says you can't teach AI. So then what you want to do is look at history repeats itself because really no one listens the first time. And it doesn't repeat itself, it just kind of rhymes. But on those calls, if you quickly look back, I go, hey, I'm teaching a digital leadership course. These students need to learn it. If they're not getting it here at Northwestern, they're going to get it somewhere else.
Mm.
But also remember that when calculators first came out, let's go look at the newspaper. So I'd pull up newspaper clippings and show them that this should be banned in the classroom. You can't use a calculator in the classroom. But then in time, you realize, wait, sometimes it's good to have a calculator in class. Sometimes it's good to even use the calculator for a test. And then other times, you're not allowed to use it. So it's really always goes back to that Flintstones and Jetsons piece. A lot of the stuff that we wrestle with is new from a standpoint of the technology's new, but the constructs are the same.
So what's the case for not having AI, you're not teaching AI, not using AI in the classroom? And do you buy that case, or where do you stand on it as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, it's quickly changed that now they're teaching it immediately.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to have that case anymore. But if you had to argue for keeping it out, well, there's sometimes to keep it out of the classroom because there's some studies out at MIT that if you only use generative AI, then there's a part of your brain that doesn't get
Mm.
developed. So if you're a journalist, you have to learn to write. So there's got to be instances where, hey, this assignment, you cannot use any of this generative AI. Next assignment, knock yourself out. You can use any tool you want. And so it's important to be able to develop those pieces of the brain. So this interesting case study that they came out with MIT. So again, sometimes it's like, hey guys, it's all Flintstones right now. No AI for this assignment. Got to write on your own. Go for it. And then like a hot knife through butter. Once you let them use the AI, all of a sudden it's a lot easier.
Well, and the classroom to me, and this is one of the things I was excited to talk about, is the classroom to me is a really interesting case study of AI, of this new technology, and not just AI, but just it feels like, and I'm curious on your perspective, that just technology has entered the classroom in a really big way in the last handful of years, like call it since 2020, like, this decade, kind of post-pandemic, virtual classroom. I'm curious from your perspective, how has teaching changed in that time? And, is it better or worse? And what kind of lessons have you taken away and around how you teach now versus 10 years ago?
I think it's a lot better. I think that, I mean, the old joke was it's still somewhat true today that the only thing that hasn't changed is the teaching approach. That if you went back 100 years ago, you walked in the classroom, there's a professor in front of the room giving a lecture. And so I think it's dramatically improved just in the short time, the last 10 years. I mean, I've got online I'm asking students all the time, "Hey, look that up. That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer." So then it's more peer-to-peer learning. Now at the same time, what's interesting is we crave that human connection, that face-to-face. So for the class that I teach at Northwestern, most of these students are flying in from around the world for a week. They get a 15-week credit because it's 8 to 6. Now, the feedback that we received was, "Hey, it'd be great if you could use the city as a classroom." So historically, we'd bring in like CMOs to speak or CTOs to speak in the class. And so what that now looks like this year, what we did is we went because I have it's the person that runs all the Cubs marketing and PR is a connection. So she was kind enough to have her team sit down with all her students, and we visited Wrigley Field. They walked us through how they use data, AI, analytics, and then we got to do a tour of Wrigley Field, go touch the ivy. So it was awesome. A couple days later, former student had us to the Shed Aquarium. If you've never been to Chicago, amazing aquarium. So they show us how do they attract people to the aquarium using digital analytics. How are they using AI for the animals themselves? And then you get a tour with jazz being played in the aquarium. And so that's that yin yang, that Flintstones Jetsons. So from a teaching perspective, I think that's the right approach. Is that, and we always have them do a project that they're going to implement in their companies. I hate dealing with hypotheticals. And so it's like, this is what you're going to do. You got to identify an opportunity where there's friction for your customer or for your teammates. And this is a safe place. At the end of the week, you're going to present, and it's your first presentation that we're going to poke holes in so that you're more prepared to go and implement that within your organization, whether that's a big company or whether you're an entrepreneur, is real world experience. And so that's, I think, in my mind, not everyone's shifted that way, but that's the way that we teach. And I think it's a way better way to do it.
I no, I love that. And I mean, in some ways, it's a very different answer than what I expected because it's not like it's a low tech answer, right? As you said,
Yeah.
it's more Flintstones than Jetsons. It's not, hey, everybody, let's, cram into a Zoom call. It's like, I don't know, it's like more Magic School Bus than, than Jetsons there, right? It's getting out into the world and
Yeah.
trip oriented.
The Jetsons component is all of a sudden a student, this happened this semester was, "Hey, I figured out, Professor Qualman, I figured out how to make those gorillas. I've animated them. They're talking." He worked at a barbecue company, so he had them 2 gorillas he'd made it within an hour. 2 gorillas, Hawaiian shirts with the rub from their barbecue company. "Oh, you can put this rub on anything." And then he started just putting it on everything on the grill. And so it went viral, but that happened in the classroom. And so he raised his hand. I go, "Come on up here. Like, plug in your computer up here on the monitor and just walk us through what you're doing." And so that's the major shift, is that literally every year my class is like 70% different, but then there's a 30% that's at core. Like I said, technology changes every
Mm.
second, human nature never does. So that 30% is never going to change. And then the 70% changes every year. So it's kind of hard as
Yeah.
a teacher, but you have to be that adaptable.
Yeah. So, I'm going to try not to necessarily boil your entire curriculum down to a few sentences, but as you've been teaching that class for a number of years, is there like, a main piece of advice you've been giving students that stays the same year after year? And is there a piece of advice that you're finding you're giving in 2025 that's like something has changed now that you weren't talking about last year?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely the same piece of advice. Most of the time, these are very successful people, but most of the time who are doing these things they're going to implement in their company, I go, "That's great. You got to think bigger. This could be bigger." And I'll give 'em an example. I'm like, "That's a good idea, but it could be bigger. You got to get people excited. It's got to be bigger." Other advice is, yeah, you're busy, but you're not producing anything. You're doing a lot of throughput, but you're not getting the output. And so it's, what are you producing? So someone might
Right.
ask me, how do I ascend the ladder in my career? I go, you got to be marking down, what are you producing that's helping that organization? And so you should be writing those down throughout the time. You should be checking with your boss a lot of what success looks like for them. But those are the two pieces of advice I find that are standing the test of time. Your second question is a little more difficult. I'm trying to think what's new. Um, without just being the bits and the bytes.
Yeah.
So trying to think, because I mean, it's specific to artificial intelligence. Last year was all metaverse. The year before that was all social media. So these things shift so fast. Uh, the other piece of advice is, hey, just test out the 20%. Don't go all in on this stuff. Figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work, and go from there. Like Clubhouse, right? I was like, man, am I missing the boat? Why is everyone so fired up on this Clubhouse thing? Oh my gosh, I have to put in all this time on Clubhouse. Well, it lasted like a month, right?
Yeah.
Or these glasses or Google Plus, whatever that was called. Guy Kawasaki wrote a book. I'm like, what? I guess maybe this is bigger than I think it's gonna be if Guy's writing a book on this. And it petered out, right? So it's important to kind of see what's like a flash in the pan, and what's gonna stand the test of time. That's really hard to do. So it's try to be as nimble as possible, keep it light so that you're ready when that domino falls, when QR codes become pervasive, even though they're made in 94. A lot of us, like yourself, myself, people listening to this, 2003, we think everyone's going to use them. QR codes are great. No one used them. World wasn't ready for it. All of a sudden, pandemic hits 2020, boom. So things are slow to the really fast. That's why you need to be in this stuff. And so you're ready to go fast when it's there, but don't overinvest.
Right. Right. No, it makes sense. And just the value, it sounds like, of like dipping a toe in,
Yeah.
seeing if something's really working rather than going all in on, the latest thing.
Yeah.
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 Go ahead.
No, I was thinking too, is interesting. A lot of times too, whether it's when I'm brought into companies, it's a lot easier as an outsider to see the bigger picture. So it's hard to read the prescription when you're inside the bottle. So Mont Blanc, they make these fancy watches and pens, and they bring me in because this is a while ago, but social media is exploding. So it's a long time ago. So I read a book, Socialnomics. Social media is exploding. All right, we need to do social media. So they bring me in. I'm like, all right, cool. Where are we sending them? Montblanc.com? Oh, yeah, we don't have a website. No, we only sell through the retailers, the maisons, as they say in France. I'm like, all right, well, hold on. That's why I wrote the second book, Digital Leadership, because I was going to these companies. I'm like, oh, these folks don't even have a clue the bigger picture landscape when it comes to digital. And it's not digital specific. The good thing about digital, it pokes holes in your whole strategy. So you think about search, like what search word should we be number one for? Well, if you're a travel company, is it cheap airfare? Is it airfare? Is it travel deals? So that really sets your strategy. It really pokes holes in your whole organization. You can't stand for everything. So anyways, going back a little bit to the Mont Blanc example, is like, okay, guys, we got to develop a website first. And this is going to be painful because you're going to have to tell all your retailers that now you're going to sell directly to the customer. And then they think you're crazy because who's going to buy a $20,000 watch online? I go, trust me, they will. It's coming. So we got to adjust these things. So more times than not, it's really hard to see that stuff if you're inside. And so that's what's been fascinating in my career, just being able to kind of come in and be able to work with these amazing companies and be able to see something that's kind of too big to see for them if you're sitting there.
Well, and it ties back to you saying think bigger, but we've kind of backed into this question around, basically digital strategy, digital transformation. I mean, those have both kind of become buzzwords by this point, but I don't want to dismiss them because they're really, really important. And it sounds like, what you're saying is your digital strategy is just your strategy. They're the same thing. It's just kind of a, dimension to it. Is that true? And if that is true, how do you typically recommend that organizations tackle it? Who needs to be at the table? What are the big questions you need to ask? And how do you make sure that it's successful?
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. And who needs to be at the table? You need to start at the top. So that doesn't mean that your CEO needs to be programming your social media strategy or AI strategy. What that means is you're not saying a question like, what's our AI strategy? The question is, what is our strategy? And how do we help our customer? Let's say it's a B2C company. Our customer, how do we how do we create, so basically, let's start first principle. Instead of going from A to Z company would say like, okay, AI, how are we going to implement it? Because the board's saying, what's our AI strategy? So then the CIO comes down to the CTO and goes, what's our AI strategy? Then it funnels down, and then they're trying to come up with something like, this is what we're doing for AI. Rather than the good companies would ask they'd flip it. Instead of going from A to Z, they have a challenge or a new opportunity. They flip it and go to Z, which for every company is going to be creating a smile for that customer. All right, so how do I create that smile for the customer? Then walk our way back. And along that line, there's probably some technology that'll help remove any friction. That'll help create that smile. And so that's a better approach. And it needs to come from the top down. It needs to be pervasive throughout the company, the culture, meaning it's about fail fast, fail forward, fail better. We're going to fail. So if we're going to fail, let's do it fast. And let's fail forward. That means we're going to actually have hard conversations, what didn't work. And that allows us to not repeat the same mistake twice. That allows us to fail better. So that's the companies that'll win. A good example of that is, I own an animation studio, so we're doing some work with Disney, which at the time, like, why you call it us, Why don't you just use the Pixar guys? And so Bob Iger wanted a video that showed that they were digital, like they just weren't Disney. They're actually a digitally forward company. They're about to launch Disney Plus, so they hadn't launched it yet. They're thinking it through. And so I happened to be there doing this animation project just to showcase, hey, Disney's actually like a digital first company. And so helped them develop the script, and then we animated it and gave them that thing. But when I was sitting there in Orlando, they had an issue. So they said, hey, I know this has nothing to do with what you're doing with our animation, but it'd be helpful if you came down and kind of joined this meeting. So I go down there, and they're having a big debate about whether you should have selfie sticks in the park or not. So this big debate about selfie sticks in the park. I go, this is awesome. Like, I'm sitting there. My girls were young at the time too, so like, this is amazing. And there's some good arguments. Like, dude, these things could be dangerous. They're just visually not pleasing. They're blocking stuff. It's just not the experience we want. And so they quickly figure out selfie stick. All right. So then they move on to Instagram, like taking photos in front of Cinderella's castle. So they make a lot of money taking photos with professional photographers. A lot of us probably listening have paid $40 to get that picture with the family. I've got my hand raised, got that picture. So then the question is, hey, all these people have these phones now. They want to take a picture in front of the castle, which is basically in the same location that we're doing our professional photography. Should we allow it to happen? I'm like, all right, it's a good question. I go, well, let's just pause. Like, how many of you have kids? What are their ages? So most of them had young kids. I go, you're in the park. You're not working for Disney. You're at the park. How many of you want a picture in front of Cinderella's castle? Every hand goes up. All right. How many of you want to pay for it? So half the room they want to pay for it. They want to get the professional one. I go, but how many of you want to take it with your phone? So everyone raises their hand. I go, how many of you? So then they're like, okay, I see where you're going with this. I go, what would the expectation be if someone came up and said, you can't take a picture in front of the castle? You got to go through this professional photographer. Is that the Disney way? Obviously, everyone's shaking their head no. Then the question becomes, can they take it in the same location, or is that going to cause issues for the professional? I go, what would you expect as a parent, as Disney? What's your expectations? They go, you could probably take it in the same location. Okay. Then what would your expectation be if you asked the professional photographer, do you mind taking it with our phone? What would your expectation be for the brand you built at Disney? Did the photographer be nice and smile and take a picture of the phone? So then a couple lawyers pipe up and go, you can't do that because they could drop the phone. If they drop the phone, it's not only paying for the phone, but it might have erased all the pictures. I go, that's a good argument. But remember, what do you think that mom and dad from Nebraska are thinking when your photographer says no? Okay, what's the cost of that? That's a big cost, right? It's bad for your reputation. So when you look at it through that lens, all of us, no pun intended, so all of a sudden it's a different approach, right? So then they go, okay, and then they see the game. The happiest place on earth became the most Instagram place on earth, just with that change of policy. But if you walk into that meeting, which that was like the third week of that meeting, that could have gone on for months. and they probably would have gone with what the lawyers were saying rather than
Yeah.
actually getting your feet on the ground, thinking about it from the customer's lens and going from there.
It's I love that story, and one of the reasons I love it is because I've been in some version of that meeting many
Mhm.
times, and I'm sure you have too. And you kind of gloss over it and you make it sound so simple. Oh, I just asked a few questions and they got to the right conclusion. But I'm sure you've also been in meetings where they get to the wrong conclusion, as a participant in some sort. Um, and so I wanted to ask you that the approach that you took there, when I was just kind of processing what you were asking, you talked about this earlier, but it sounds like there's some sort of like implicit, like almost like a smile test. Like, is
Maybe.
this going to make my customers smile? Is that right? Or like, what's your sort of methodology for coming up with the decision that isn't just like, don't use AI in the classroom, or isn't the classically backwards decision?
Yeah, it's two things. It's what I discussed a little bit earlier. It's looking for history for a guide, because again, a lot of this stuff, it's a similar construct, just new technology. Remember, MTV was going to rot everyone's kid's brain, and social media is
Yeah.
going to be the death of all our tweens. And so it's really about knowing this has happened before. So using history as a guide, so that's super super helpful, and also to get over humps, right? So people can identify that, especially executives. You can distill it down to that movie trailer example to where it's like, remember when calculators first came out? No one wanted to use them in the classroom. Everyone uses them today in the classroom. It's a good thing, right? So all of a sudden that quickly distills thing down. Or if it's in the moment, I remember late 90s, what? No one's going to give their credit card online to buy
Right.
something. That's crazy. I go, what do you do when you go to a restaurant right now? Who do you give that credit card to? You give it to a person? They take it back to the machine? What do you think they're doing back there with that credit card? They can do anything they want. This is a lot more secure than that. All of a sudden you use those kind of examples. That's in the moment example. Then they can kind of see it a little better. So that's what I found really helpful with working with any folks, is trying to figure out a common sense approach to these things. And one of the common sense approaches is, what's at the end of the line? And the end of the line is always a smile. Otherwise, you're not gonna be
Hmm.
in business. The reason you're in business is you're creating a smile.
Yeah.
Even if you're a tax accountant, you my tax accountant, I smile because I don't have to spend 50 hours doing my taxes for my small businesses. They do it. So they're removing that friction. And God bless them if they use technology to make it easier and faster, because that eventually is going to make it cheaper and faster for me as well.
So there's one more nuance that I want to talk through because I think it can be a sticking point for some people. You mentioned earlier like the importance of boldness. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's some level of boldness required in this decision because yeah, I mean you talked about the lawyers, but there's another angle here, and we've talked about it a few times already today, which is there's somebody in this room who's doing the math on the $40 per photo. And they're saying, whoa, whoa, like we're going to
Yep.
start losing $40 per photo. Or if it's
Right.
Mont Blanc, they're saying there's somebody losing money if we go digital. And I'm,
Yep.
I'm categorizing all this as digital.
Yeah.
So, it would be so easy if everything digital or everything with new tech didn't have any sort of disruption or especially no sort of
Sure.
financial disruption. But
Yeah.
there's always somebody left kind of, holding the bag of like, well, I was the photographer leader and
Yeah.
suddenly over a year, like it's Disney. It's got to be probably like, over $1 million just for that one castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you need? What do you need from a leadership perspective? What do you need organizationally to get people to the right decision, to cut through but not every single person can win, and yet somehow we all win together?
Yeah, exactly. No, that in that room was the person exactly right. The title was similar to what you said, but it was just one piece of the revenue stream. But it was sizable. It was double figures in the millions from the photography.
Yeah.
So then it became tricky because you're trying to guess what the return is for being the most Instagram place on the planet. So in those
Yeah.
instances, I don't know. I was only in that meeting, so I don't know. They eventually went with it.
Yeah.
But let's say in that example, it could be, I'm a big fan of beta tests. So you got to go into these. That's what we teach at Northwestern as well. who's going to be the person that's against you in that room? And you need to meet with everyone in that room before you get in there. So you're not surprised. Like, you already have people for and against you before you get in that meeting. So you want to meet with all the people before you get, you don't want to be surprised we're in that meeting. And so you want to get their advice and attack it and even flip it on them. The person that's going to be the most cantankerous, hey, can you argue the point on the other side, and I'll defend it. So that's a good thing that you get them on the same page. You can see both sides of that argument. But a lot of times for going into situations, so if we were to use the Disney example, is that you'd say, hey, we're going to test it in our least popular park. So let's do it. For example, it might be Paris. I don't know. So we're
Poor Paris.
yeah, we're going to test it at the Paris Disney. So you want to beta test this stuff. That's a way to get approval, essentially. Hey, we're just beta testing in this market. A lot of times it's like, hey, we're just going to beta test on this product line. But in the instance, once it's determined, then it's like you have to agree. That's why you need that culture of trust. So the person that's going to lose, I'm not going to say the number, the millions of dollars on the photography, they've got to understand that their goal gets reset. Hey, this marketing is going to benefit, or the turnstile is going to benefit because there's going to be more visitors because people are exposed to it via Instagram and see how exciting the new Star Wars ride is. Everyone's want to go because of Instagram. And so that department's going to benefit. But my department, which had all this revenue from the photos, is going to take a hit. So we've got to reset the goals and be fair about this stuff.
It makes complete sense. And
Yeah.
no, I love the beta testing approach. I love the idea
Yeah.
of like actually supporting it with data versus just a bunch of people arguing in a room about what might happen. Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Again, we've talked about new tech and what it can do and what it can't do, and some of the changing trends. As you think about the impact on leaders and on organizations, what are you hearing any bad advice right now? Like, are you seeing anything in the news, or is there anything people are talking about that you're like, yeah, that sounds trendy, but like, I don't really think that's going to take off?
I would say people just say, hey, these jobs are going to be taken right now. Most of the time, that change is evolutionary rather than revolutionary. It's going to change. I mean, we don't have a person in the elevator pushing buttons for us anymore. And so those jobs change, but now you have people that are working on the elevators. They like learn how to work them, then fix them. Or if you ever see the movie Hidden Figures, great movie. So great movie. It really showcases 3 women, African-American women, that helped us get on the moon. And during that time when they're trying to get on the moon, literally, most people don't know this, but computers, the reason they're called computers, you had people that were doing the computations of that math. So in this movie, they have them paper and pencil doing these long computations, like putting just a bunch of people power to these computations. But obviously then IBM comes along and they can start doing these computations. So then those jobs do eventually go away, but then the heroes in the story, they actually get much better jobs. Because one, for example, is now needs to train everyone how to use this IBM computer. And so they become much better job positions. So it gets back to that flexibility, adoption. Some of the winners right now, if you want to change your career, I always tell people, look, you could become an expert on AI because this stuff's so new. If you dig into it 24/7, you're going to know more than 99% of the people in the world. And so if it's an interest to you, this is your moment in time when these shifts happen. And it happened, we think about social media, you have all these social media influencers, you have people as social media coaches, all this stuff that occurs, social media photographers, is that when these shifts happen, if you want to change your career and you're passionate about this stuff, then those are the winners as well. So AI is not going to take your job, but someone that knows how to use AI is going to take your job.
Well, and it sounds like you're pretty bullish in general about, the impact on jobs, that like maybe AI will take your job description, but
Yeah.
it's not going to take your job, or the net number of jobs is going to
Right.
increase, or the value of jobs.
Yeah. They're going to change. I mean, there'll be things that change. I mean, part of the reason it's so slow, the self-driving, is because the number one job in America is drivers. And God bless them. But I mean, literally, in my personal opinion, I think that if you just went to self-driving, I was hoping Singapore just does it. Like, that would be the beta test. Like, Singapore just mandates everything self-driving. It's like, oh my gosh, accidents went down 95%. What happened? Oh, because they're all self-driving. They all talk to each other. Yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve and stuff, and accidents still happen. There's still deaths, but it's been reduced to 95% reduction. So it'll be fascinating to see how. So sometimes as things move slow, because whether it's governmental red tape, whether it's just we're not ready for it, the technology might be there, but you have to wait. Like the QR codes, you had to wait since '94 to have them come out, and now they're pervasive and they're not perfect. Like the key is the Flintstones, Jetsons, right? The perfect
Mm.
world is you go in the restaurant. If I want a paper menu, there's a paper menu. If I want to use a QR code menu to blow it up so I can see it better, then I use the QR code menu. So that's Flintstones and Jetsons.
Yeah. It makes complete sense, and, yeah, I like I like the framing of it, and, if it's something that's valuable to people, then, we're gonna keep doing it, and we're gonna make a conscious decision to keep doing it, but, if the driver, as you said, if you're not even looking for a driver, you're just looking for your daughters to get driven from point A to point B, then,
Yeah.
what's the point?
Yeah.
Um,
Or like email or chatbots have a bad name because they're not used correctly. Email's great if you use it well. Just like chatbots are great if you use them well. So, for example, if I have an AI chatbot at my hotel, the thing's amazing if it's executing properly. You're still gonna have the concierge, but if I just wanna know what time's the gym open, oh, it's 24/7, great. Or can you book a just typing in, can you book the reservation at the restaurant for me? Absolutely. Here you go. Or what floor is the grand ballroom on? Oh, it's on the third floor. Here's how you get there. Then there's other people that want to use the concierge, or it's not giving the right answer. But it's really bots are great if they're used well. If you do them well, then they're actually super helpful. And not everyone wants to use it. So you got to understand that there's still that concierge probably there. They might not have 5 concierge because
mhm.
now you've given them scale with a chatbot concierge that hopefully is functioning well. Um, it's funny, I wanted to know what the example I was in. Whoever's been to Sea Island, Georgia, there's a lot of speaking events there, so speaking there, and at the Cloisters, and I was just needing to know what time the gym was open, and so they had a chatbot, and I texted it, and it told me it was at 7. Then I talked to a person at the front desk, and they said opens at 8, so I'm like, "Ooh, which one's gonna be right?"
And?
It turned out the human was right. I thought for sure it'd be the chatbot that was
Mm,
right, and then so there's still some stuff like anyone that's used any of these tools, it still misses some simple things, but that one's just a programming error. That's, like, ridiculous that it doesn't know that answer because that's just it was programmed incorrectly.
yeah. But it speaks to what you value, I guess, for your customers, right? Do
Yeah.
you value having a hotel where you can have an always on, always get a quick answer, reliably, that's extended service, or do you value that, human connection?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't know, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. Like maybe every single hotel in the world will move to just like that concierge model, but like, yeah, yeah, that case is a perfect case why you still may want to have a human you talk to, right?
Yeah, you want both. I mean, and so that's not that you're increasing the cost. Like I said, it's probably reduces that concierge staff
No,
down,
right.
and so it's trying to figure out which of most of us want, in most instances, kind of both. Do you have the optionality? Like, if I can get a quick answer, these phone trees are terrible. No one likes them because 'cause they're designed horribly. You gotta push, like,
Mm,
20 buttons, and it goes to different departments. But if like, Tony Hsieh, before he passed away, his thing was all about well, I was sitting there talking with him, I'm like, "What's the key to Zappos' success? You know, you sold it for $1 billion to Amazon. What was the key?" He goes, "I learned early on we don't sell shoes, we sell customer service. That we're in the business of not shoes, we're
uh,
in the business of customer service." I go, what do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, I looked at our marketing budget, it's 40 million." I go, "What would happen if I moved that 40 million over to customer service?" And so what would happen is that now I'm not judging my net promoter score, which those listeners that don't know what that is, it really judges it's a universal tool that allows you to compare yourself, what your customer service levels are to other people, not only in your market, other people that sell shoes, so or other markets like cruise lines, for example. And so he goes, "It allowed me to say instead of most companies would badger their customer service to get off the phone as quickly as possible because that costs money. Once I moved that $40 million over, Like, if they want to talk to you on the phone about where's the best place to get pizza in Vegas, because that's where Zappos was headquartered, then stay on the phone with that person.
Mm.
Because I know that's my new marketing. It's going to be that word of mouth that we go above and beyond for the customer. And that's better money spent than the 40 million I was going to spend on traditional marketing and digital marketing. Is that I moved that over because I think that's the new marketing. That's I'm speaking what he was saying. That's the new marketing. So that's why they became so successful. So sometimes it's just thinking differently, but it's always about thinking about your customer first.
Mhm.
It's thinking outside in versus inside out.
Well, and I really like that example because it highlights like the power and the tyranny of metrics, right? Like, what are
Mhm.
you actually measuring? And if you're measuring, how many of these things can a customer service agent resolve? Yeah, sure. I mean, you can send that through the roof, but what are the trade-offs? Like, once you flip that on its head and say, like, how happy are the people? Like,
Yep.
and by the way, I'm a huge advocate of just like happy customers, like
Yep.
happy stakeholders. Like, I feel like that's a good measure. So it's really interesting. I really like that example.
Yeah, it is crazy because you're in their office and that's what they had just a whiteboard and they erase the net promoter score every day just to see what that
Hmm.
number was, handwritten.
Nice.
There's other stuff
Nice.
on there. I'm like, crazy, dude. You're letting me in here, like I can see all that stuff. I won't say anything. I was writing a book at the time. I go, I won't unless you say it's okay for me to put what's on that board. And then I went to a party later that night. I was like, this is nuts. What's happening here? But I'll keep it off the record.
That's so cool. So I
Yeah.
want to, Eric, I do want to come back to something we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is uh, the fact that AI may be kind of undervalued short term, but or sorry, it's overvalued short term, undervalued long term.
Mm.
When we look at the long term, call it like 2030 or beyond, what's kind of the Eric Qualman version of what the future looks like? Like, what are the big things long term that you think we're going to see that are different from, how things are running right now?
I mean, you're going to have basically your agent, for lack of a better term, doing proactive stuff for you so you don't have to do it. Um, and it's a long term because honestly, 20 years ago, I was at these things called Google Dances. It's a total nerd thing, but it's like all the people that were in search, because search was the cat's meow at the time, like organic paid search. How do you show up high in the rankings? So they'd have these Google Dances where they'd give you a little inside baseball sometimes, not too much about how you can show up higher, but they had this big party dance at the end. But I bring that up because at the time, and they still haven't done this, which is shocking to me because they can flip a switch right now. I basically use Google Calendar, I use Google Maps like all of us. We're using all these tools that are in their family, in their house. And it still doesn't tell me, hey, you got to leave 5 minutes or you got to leave now, Eric, because there's traffic. Google Maps knows there's traffic. It's talking to
Mm.
Google Calendar. You've got a 2 o'clock appointment. You need to leave now. You probably were going to leave in 10 minutes like you normally do to get there. That's not the case. Things just shifted. So that's just an example of what it like. Why isn't that here? So for someone like me and probably you and our listeners, it gets a little frustrating. Like, why is that so slow? They
Yeah.
could turn that on right now. But looking out ahead, it's really getting back to what I mentioned, which I call individual redundancy. So removing multiple individual redundancies so that if I have a kid and I all of a sudden need this will and testament, before it was just me, I didn't care. But now it's like, whoa, I actually need to put out this will. Who's this going to go to? Now I'm just starting from point A, zero, ground zero. I don't know anything about a will. I got to figure out, is there a lawyer that's going to help me? Am I going to do it through a legal Zoom? How do I do this? But again, proactively, your agent's going to be able to do that for you. They'll be able to look to see
Right.
what's been done before, quickly do it. Eric, do you want me to get your will and testament written? Yes, please. Here's your options. We recommend this one. It's going to cost this, if it costs anything at all. So a lot of that underwriting is going away. Those are some of the losers right now. A lot of that simple underwriting is going away. And so that's what gets me excited. Or let's think about your smart home. Hey, a pipe just burst. We've got a plumber on the way to fix it. So that agent's already
Yeah.
doing that for you. The house already recognized something went awry, or hopefully it notices that thing's about to break before it does. And that's already here. Like drones
Mm.
and AI sensors are being used on these pipelines to indicate that's worn out. Before you'd have like a manual person kind of go along the Alaskan pipeline to figure out where it's weak. Now it's got technology that can do that for you with AI. So that's what I see out there. Just us having it's the greatest time. This is the best time to ever live. Amazing, right? So good. Yeah, there's complications, but it's only gonna get better and better. This stuff that we go through these complications, but gosh, imagine just having to pull out your paper map again and getting lost. So it's a great
No, I,
time.
lo- I love that optimism, and it's a really compelling vision. Eric, I want to say a big thank you for joining today. It's been a really great conversation, and I appreciate your insights.
No, I love it. Yeah, we'll do it again soon. This is fantastic. Thank you to all your listeners. Love it.